Thank you for listening to the latest edition of Your Injury Lawyer podcast. We would really appreciate it if you could tell your friends about this podcast so we can increase our viewership. If you're interested in being on the podcast or know someone that would be interested on being in the podcast, please feel free to reach out to me. Our office number is 239-549-6689, and my email is billbberkey, B-E-R-K-E, @gmail.com. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Hello, everyone. This is Bill Berkey with an edition of Your Injury Lawyer podcast. And today we have a special guest today, Jordan Jones. Jordan is a truck lawyer. I think he is based in California. Jordan, can you maybe tell everyone a little bit about yourself and where you're based right now?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to see you again and an honor to be on here. But yeah, I'm in Southern California. My law firm's called Los Angeles Truck Accident Lawyers, based in LA. I'm right smack downtown. Litigated in Michigan for many years, and then I kind of started taking on trucking cases nationally. Ended up settling in the Southern California area, and that's my home base now.
Sounds excellent. How's the weather in California today?
It's beautiful. The weather is beautiful every day.
So can you tell our listeners a little bit about where are you from and maybe how you ended up becoming a lawyer?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Canada. I was born and raised, and went to college in Canada. Ended up coming to law school in Detroit, which was awesome. You know, you kind of have some preconceived notions about Detroit, especially back then. It was like the early 2010s. So it was still kind of rough. So my intention was, go to Detroit, and then I wanted to graduate and then come out to California. Ended up staying there for, I think I was there for 11 years. And it was amazing. But you wanted to, had no lawyers in my family. It was just something I always wanted to do. Thought it was something that would be, a noble profession and good. I like helping people. And I really fell into PI and I really fell into trucking. And I started doing trucking day one since actually started working on trucking cases when I was a law clerk. I became a lawyer and been working on trucking cases ever since. And now I handle pretty much 100% trucking cases. I take a one-off here and there, but it's like 99% truck cases.
So you're the only lawyer in your family?
Yes, sir.
I'm the only lawyer in my family also.
Oh, nice. There we go. That's why we get along so well.
Sounds great. So you got a law clerk job when you were in law school in a trucking firm, and just kind of that's how it all started, huh?
Basically, yeah. It was. It wasn't just a trucking firm. It was like it was a pretty big, for a plaintiff's firm. It was pretty big, and they did like auto. So it'd just be red car, blue car, in addition to trucking. But it was like a pretty good sized firm. They had like a lot of trucking cases. Like at any given time in the firm, there was like 50 trucking cases. Amongst the various attorneys, various teams. And it was awesome because I got like tons and tons of experience. And the way that I actually kind of became a trucking lawyer, this is a true story. The owner is a guy named Steve Gerson. He's a great guy, great friend of mine. He's a mentor, not just professionally, but also a personal mentor of mine. And he owned the firm, and he went on vacation, and he came back from vacation. He just walked in the door, walked up to my desk. He's like, had an epiphany. How would you like to be a trucking lawyer? And I was like, sign me up. I didn't even know there was such a thing, but that's how I got put on to trucking, and I got tons of experience. Probably handled, I don't know exactly, but probably 200 plus trucking cases now through today, just because I got so much experience. So it was great. It was awesome.
Could you tell our listeners what is different about a trucking versus a normal car crash case? Are there different rules?
Yeah. Everything's different. Yeah, well, right off the hop, the law is different because a lot of times you're dealing with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations if you're in interstate commerce. And even if you're not in interstate commerce, a lot of states have adopted the regs anyway. So you still end up under the regs, even if you truly are intrastate. So it's just like a whole separate body of law. You're dealing with different kinds of experts, and then different standard of care. The standard of care for driving a semi truck is different than what you would do in your passenger vehicle. So you start looking at industry materials like the CDL manual. You look at like J.J. Keller's got a lot of great stuff. I look at the Alice Adams book a lot. There's a lot of stuff from just industry publications. Like I look at some CVSA materials from time to time. A lot of different stuff. So it's just totally different. It's like apples and oranges, really.
Okay. And you mentioned trucks are different than cars. So let's just start out with a basic question. What brings a truck into being a truck? Meaning, I would assume a tractor trailer is huge and big and clearly a truck. And how small can a truck be to qualify as a truck under those kind of laws?
Yeah, it generally goes by the weights. When you have like a standard tractor with a 53-foot trailer, you're always going to be within the confines of the regs, and kind of the top tier is 26,000 plus. Then it's like between 10,000 and 26,000, and then when you start getting at the state level, like sometimes you'll be in like a 5,000. But generally under the regs, kind of your two magic numbers, you're going to be 10,001 pounds and then 26,001 pounds. Those are kind of your two magic numbers. And then if you're within that 10,000 range, depending if you're in a combination vehicle, meaning like a tow unit and then a trailer situation, there's going to be one set of rules. You get to the 26,001, there's a different segment of the regs that are going to apply, different licensing requirements. So it's really interesting. I mean, you asked the question, when is a truck a truck? And that's a really great question, because sometimes you litigate cases, and it's a perfect example is landscaping companies, and they just have whatever, like a Ford F-250 or an F-350, and they have a big long tractor, hauling equipment or whatever it is. Excuse me. Sorry, I meant to say a trailer, a big long trailer hauling equipment, and you put those two things together, and then you start getting up in those weights, right? You start looking at not only the actual weight, but the gross weight rating, and that can start triggering the regs. So you may have like an F-150 or an F-250, and you're falling under the regs, and you may not necessarily think about that. So that's a really, really good question.
At what point does someone need to, for example, be a CDL driver?
26,001, or if hazmats is another one. And then there's also like things related to passengers that you see kind of more in like limousines and buses. I don't deal with those as much. I do some bus work, but it's mostly trucking. But yeah, 26,000 is when you're generally going to need a CDL, or if you're hauling chemicals or some sort of a hazmat.
So there are all kinds of liability issues because it's a trucking case versus an auto case. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about maybe some kind of issues that might come up on liability? For example, I went to the seminar with you, Jordan, and just looking at the materials, if it's a slippery surface, what is a truck driver supposed to do differently?
Yeah. So, you want to know about liability issues? How much time do you have? But,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, can you maybe just give us an example of a liability issue that's different on a truck case versus an auto case? A truck is a huge, big, heavy vehicle that's hard to stop. So because of that, the laws are written that a truck driver should be driving much more carefully than a normal auto. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. So what you do is totally different. In terms of like much more carefully, you got to be kind of careful with that, because depending the jurisdiction you're in, like some jurisdictions say like, yes, this is a higher standard of care for a commercial vehicle driver versus your ordinary person. Other jurisdictions say it's not a higher standard of care. It's just still the ordinary person standard of care. But it's the ordinary person under the circumstances. So if you're a CDL licensed commercial driver hauling a loaded 53-foot trailer and you 80,000 pounds, what a reasonable person does driving that is different than what a reasonable person will do driving your Cadillac XT4 or your Honda Civic, whatever you drive, right? So it's not necessarily like higher, but it's just different is the way that I like to explain it. Now, sometimes it is higher. Like, for example, if like when you're in extreme driving conditions, reg it's 392.14. It calls for extreme caution. Now, when you're in extreme caution, that's a higher standard. It's not, it's not ordinary. It's talking about extreme, and there's some good case law on that, especially in California. But just like a couple of really quick examples, you brought up wet surfaces. On a wet surface, when you're driving in a personal vehicle, I mean, it's probably a good idea to slow down a little bit, right? I mean, it's almost kind of like common sense. But when you're in a 80,000 pound tractor trailer, that number one, they take a long time to stop to begin with. And number two, it's harder and takes even longer to stop when that road surface is wet. So if you look in the commercial driver's license manual, it says reduce your speed by 1/3 of the posted speed limit. If there's snow, you're supposed to reduce by half. If there's ice on the road, you're supposed to go down to a crawl. And again, because it's so hard to stop those things, right? So it's just things like that, and even things like turning, like something as simple as a right-hand turn, you wouldn't even think twice about in your personal vehicle. You got to account for all the space you're going to take in your commercial vehicle, and sometimes you have to go into the oncoming lane. That's actually the proper way you're supposed to do it. It's called a button hook turn, right? So just all these things that you wouldn't even think of. They're just very, very different because of the size and the weight of the vehicle.
Can you maybe tell us what do you mean by a hidden motor carrier?
Sure. Yeah. So a hidden motor carrier is just my definition. I don't know that there is like an official definition. It's not in the regs or anything, but my definition is just a motor carrier who is not readily apparent, that you're not going to see just by, looking at the police report or something like that. And I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I had a case. It was kind of like a small motor carrier. I think they had like 3 trucks, 3 drivers, and he just blasted a line of cars that were stopped. He hit. I think it ended up being a 7-car accident. My lady was catastrophically injured, and they had $1 million in coverage. And just kind of called me up, and they're like, "Hey, here's our $1 million." And not just me. They called up all the plaintiffs' lawyers and they said, "Here's our $1 million. You guys figure it out." And I didn't want to take the $1 million because I was like, "Look, I got to do my due diligence." And kind of a long story short, fast forward, what ended up happening was the trailer that was connected to the tractor was owned by a different company. So we started getting into that and got their insurance policies. And the way the policy was written, the policy attached to the driver. The driver was considered an insured under the terms of the policy. And then also in the alternative, because they were kind of arguing that a little bit, but in the alternative, it was their load. It was the trailer company's load. And what happened was they went out, they got this load, then they didn't have enough trucks. So all they did was they kind of brought in the sub hauler and said, "Here, you guys take this." But it was still their load. It was like being moved under their DOT number, and they were communicating directly with the driver. They were communicating with the shipper, the receiver, kind of running the whole show, but it was just a sub hauler. But by definition, they were the motor carrier under 13102 sub 14. By definition, they were the motor carrier because it was their load. They were being paid to transport the load, and it was moving under their DOT number. But that's not what it said on the police report. So it's like things like that. If that makes any sense.
And you mentioned broker liability and shipper liability. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, number one, it might be going away soon. But as it exists, as I'm sitting here right now, it's kind of twofold. You can make a negligent selection claim if they don't properly screen the motor carrier and they pick an incompetent or an unsafe carrier and then they go out and hit somebody. And then the other avenue is like an agency claim, like where they're exercising control over the motor carrier and their operations. So those are generally kind of the two avenues that you have to pursue brokers and shippers. The hard thing with that is you're always dealing with the F4A. It's like the Federal Aviation Administration Authorization Act, and it has preemption in there. And there's not a clear answer right now. There's split in the circuits. And then when you get down to like the district court levels, those are all over the place too. Some districts say you can sue a broker. Some say you cannot. They're totally immune, at least for the active negligent selection. So it's just really kind of up in the air right now. There's a bill in front of the Senate right now that would like per se establish reasonableness in the selection of motor carriers. But that's, it's not law right now. So that's how it exists, right now as I'm sitting here speaking to you.
Okay. Can you maybe give us an example of a case that you were involved in where maybe you had some liability issues or insurance issues and kind of describe kind of what you did to try to maximize the recovery for your clients?
Yeah, for sure. Like I've sued brokers before. I've had broker cases. Tried a broker case last year, and that was that case was in Michigan. And just the way the law is in Michigan, it's really weird. There's like putting aside the F4A, there's no duty to investigate independent contractors, anyways. So it was just like a straight agency claim. So I've had that. Hidden motor carriers. Had scenarios where I got one going right now where the truck was overloaded it wasn't like the shipper, but it was like this company that the shipper brought in to load. They overloaded the truck, and then he was driving, he overturned. So the weight is certainly a factor in that, right? So going after them. So you just again, I just go back to Bill, just understanding like what the transportation cycle looks like and who's all involved, and then you look for where were the breakdowns, right? And sometimes there is no break. Sometimes, really and truly, the truck driver just messed up, and that does happen sometimes. But you don't know that if you don't know where to look, I guess is a good way to put it.
And because you've handled so many cases and you've had so many weird situations, you kind of know where to look now.
Well, I'm always continuously trying to learn, but I have a good start. Maybe I can put it that way. Have a good start of where to look.
So how long have you been now in California?
Been out here, I think it'll be 5 years. I think it'll be, oh, no, sorry. I've been out here full time about 4 years, actually. But yeah, I started my practice this past November. I launched and went live, and it's been awesome so far. Getting some good cases, doing some good work for some good folks. So it's been pretty good. But I was living out here working remotely. A lot of stuff back in Michigan, and then just again, nationally, I handle cases kind of wherever somebody asked me to become involved. So, but yeah, I opened up shop here in July, which has been great. I'm really, really happy. Or I'm sorry, in November. It's been awesome. Really happy I did it.
So the laws are different in California and Michigan and in other states then?
Oh, yeah. Not like in terms of the reg. I mean, the regs are the regs. It's federal law. But a lot of the procedural stuff and just kind of the different avenues you have, like I don't know if you're familiar with McAfee. Like California has followed McAfee. So if you admit course and scope, you can't bring direct negligence claims against the motor carrier. Michigan, you can. In a lot of other states, you can. It's kind of like split depending where you're at. So, stuff like that. But kind of the main big things that you're dealing with in trucking cases, it's pretty uniform.
How would someone get into becoming a trucking lawyer? Should they be co-counseling with an experienced lawyer like you, going to Academy of Truck Accident Attorney seminars? What would you recommend for someone to get more involved in trucking cases?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of the above. Like, just be the biggest thing is be hardworking and self-motivated, because there's tons and tons of great stuff out there, like free resources on the internet, even that you can just educate yourself, like, podcasts, YouTube videos, and then also, Bill, something I think is really overlooked is just like keeping a pulse on the industry. Like, it's one thing if you know the laws and you know the regs and McAfee in this case, in that case, but like you need some context. So I think you need to understand the industry. Like for example, like you can see hours of service. Actually, this is a great example. When you get driver's logs, they on the surface they look great all the time. I never get driver's logs that are facially deficient. But when you understand like the hours of service and the ways that they're cheated and what's going on in the industry. So for example, they just unplug them, right? So if you see this big long line of unidentified driving time, you're like, I wonder why that is. And just knowing the industry, you say, oh, he or she unplugged their ELD. Or if you see they're driving and then they switch to a personal conveyance and they're on a personal conveyance for 3 hours, you say, well, that doesn't sound right. This looks like, so just kind of like knowing what's going on. That's a big thing. But seminars and, talking to people, and maybe not even necessarily co-counseling, but just, picking people's brains, take somebody out to lunch, ask them some questions. And, most people in this space are happy to help and happy to do that. So
what is an ELD?
Electronic logging device. Sorry. I should have clarified. It's, it plugs directly into the engine and it knows when you're driving or not. And you have to put your status, because truck drivers are only allowed to drive a certain amount of time in a day. Like it's intended to track that, because what was happening back in the day, they had paper logs and they'd work, whatever, they drive like 15 hours and they just write down 10, drove 10 hours and they just write it down on the paper. And the thought in the ELD is it plugs into the engine. So if you're driving, you can't really do that anymore. But all that really happened is people just got more creative about it. So, but that's what an ELD is. It keeps track of your drive time and your record of duty status.
So in a lot of truck crashes, there's also videos in the trucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's becoming really common. Dash cam videos. A lot of trucking companies are adopting them for like risk management purposes, things of that nature. But yeah, that's becoming very common, and it's really helpful. It's really, really helpful because you can kind of see and get a good idea of what happened. And you may like disagree, which happens frequently, about who's at fault, but at least we can all agree on what happened because it's right there, right? So that's been really interesting. And I'll tell you what else is interesting, Bill. They're starting to couple that a lot with telematics. So it's not just the video now. There's all this other data on the back end associated with it. And then also what I'm seeing a lot more of now is, I always saw like the forward-facing dash cams that were like looking out at the traffic. I'm seeing a lot more now, like what I call a driver cam. So you have like one looking out the front window, one looking back at the driver, so you can see what the driver's doing if they're distracted. So yeah, it's really come a long way. Like especially in like the last 5 years, it just seems like it's accelerating and getting smarter and getting more sophisticated.
So you have the ELD, which keeps track of how long the driver is supposedly driving. You have cameras everywhere, and I would assume you also have a lot of the time like black boxes on the trucks that will tell the speed and slowing down, hitting the brakes at time of crashes too. So there's a lot of electronics involved in these cases sometimes.
Yeah. And there's like even more than that too. I mean, that's kind of like a bare bones basics. But yeah, like black box data, telematics separate and distinct from ELDs or black box, which is pretty common now. I'm seeing a lot of like ELDs being bundled now with telematics. That was a trend that started maybe about 5 years ago, and I'm seeing just a lot of fully integrated stuff. Like Motive started as a straight ELD, and now they have all kinds of like AI and all these great like safety features that are fully integrated, part of their telematics suite. Another interesting thing that's happening in the industry right now too is there's a major issue with cargo theft. So you're starting to see actual like devices like in the cargo itself, like GPS and things of that nature, like not on the truck, but actually in the cargo. So if that cargo goes missing, you can kind of see where it's at, right? And there's good information in that can be utilized and be relied upon. And again, going back to my point about knowing what's going on in the industry, why do I know that? Because I read FreightWaves. Because I attended a trucking conference. It wasn't even like a legal conference. It was just like people talking about trucking, and that was like a hot topic coming up. So yeah, just important to know what's going on in the industry.
What is FreightWaves?
FreightWaves is a blog. It's just they talk about all things related to transport, and that's not just trucking. They talk about shipping and every mode of transportation. But yeah, it's a really cool blog, and I read it just to stay up on what's going on in the industry. I read it a lot, actually, quite a bit.
And can you tell us what your website is?
My website, I got a wonderful domain. It is www.trucklawyers.com.
And how were you able to get that?
It was somebody owned it and they weren't using it. Reached out, said, I'm interested in buying this, named this price. I sent him a wire, and then I got the credentials.
It's a great web address. I was looking around for myself, and I'm in Florida, and a lot of them were taken. But
right.
I got Truck Wreck Florida, so I love your web. I love your web address.
Yeah, yours is good too. That's a good one. Truck Wreck Florida. That's a really good one.
Other than being a lawyer, what kind of things do you like to do when you're not practicing law? Exercise, music, travel, family?
Yeah, family's a big one for me. I spend a lot of time with my family. Got my little boys turn in 1 next week, so spend time with my little guy, my wife. I like to exercise, ride my Peloton quite a bit. I have a tonal. I like to do tonal, like to do Peloton. Other than that, just hanging out with friends, dinner. Like to eat good food. Go to the vineyards quite a bit. We go out in Temecula Valley a pretty good amount. It's about an hour and a half east of LA. Some wonderful vineyards out there. So yeah, that's generally what I like to. Reading's a big one for me too. I don't know, man. I just kind of like to know what's going on and always try to just be a little bit better today than I was yesterday. So I like to exercise and read and do things, be a good family man, stuff like that.
What are you reading mostly? Legal stuff or novels or a combination?
No, I read enough legal stuff. I mean, so I do read some legal stuff, but I read exclusively nonfiction, and probably like 80% is like productivity, self-improvement. And then the other 20% is like legal stuff, like some, like trial guides, books and things like that. I just finished Four Disciplines of Execution. Just finished that not too long ago. I'm reading Michael Cowan's trucking litigation book right now. He's a good friend of mine, great trucking lawyer, awesome guy. Really good book so far. I bought it a long time ago. I just never got around to reading it, but I'm reading it now. So that's those are my two latest.
Excellent. So how often do you bike ride? Is it usually always inside on the Peloton, or do you also go outside?
No, I don't even own like a regular bike. I just ride my Peloton, and it's pretty awesome. I usually ride it. It's kind of sick. Like in the summer, it's like kind of hot, so I ride more of my bike inside. But in the wintertime, in the spring, I go out. So I'll actually like do some of the Peloton walks and some of the Peloton runs. But it all kind of runs through Peloton. But yeah, on average, I probably ride my bike, I don't know, 2-3 times a week. And then I hit the tonal probably 2-3 times a week as well.
That's excellent. And how long have you been working on getting better every day? You mentioned that just since you've been a lawyer, or that?
No, probably since about 2008 when I realized I was pretty much a disaster. So just wasn't really going in a good direction. So New Year's of I think it was 2008. Yeah, New Year's of 2008. I kind of was like, you know what, I'm gonna turn things around, and yeah, just kind of started then, and just do a little bit every day, man. You just have a goal, and you just try to do one thing that's going to move me closer to that goal, and it can be something small. It doesn't have to be some big, huge thing, right? Just a little small step, just incremental, and you do that, and you look back on the year, and you're like, wow, I made a lot of progress this year. And you do that 5 years, and you say, holy cow, I'm in a totally different space. Do that in 10 years, and you're like, oh my God, who would have thought? Certainly not me. So, yeah.
Do you work on public speaking or anything like that, or you're pretty comfortable in that area?
Not really. I do it a lot, so I think you kind of get a lot of good reps and a lot of good feedback. Just as you know, I give a lot of presentations, do a lot of podcasts, try cases. That's the ultimate public speaking. Doing a trial. So it's not something I really practice, but it's just something I'm like constantly doing. So I guess I'm practicing it in that sense.
So you practiced law in Michigan, and now you're practicing law in California.
Yeah, licensed in Michigan and California, but I kind of take them wherever. I got a case in Kansas, just got one. I had a case going in Ohio. I got a case going in. I just wrapped one up in Nebraska not long ago. So you just kind of go where the case is. You can pro hawk in, and Zoom is nice now because you can make court appearances a lot more easily than you don't have to fly to Nebraska or something like that. So,
do you see that the law is pretty similar in the different states, in that the research you have to do, the law about trucking is, the federal part at least is very similar, but then there might be maybe preemption issues or treated differently, or damages treated a little bit differently? Do you see that, at least in the trucking area, it's kind of a global United States, fairly similar practice?
Yeah, and you bring up some good some good points and some good questions. This is the best answer I can give you. I think from the trucking, like purely from the trucking aspect, it's pretty similar because again, you're looking at the federal law. It's been adopted by many states. Where you start to see differences is like in terms of like what claims you can bring. Damages is a big one. If there's caps or non-caps, if there's punitives or no punitives. And then preemptions are really big one too. And the kind of crazy thing is like some jurisdictions are extending F4A preemption to shippers, and shippers aren't even listed in the statute. Like I don't even know where that came from. So like it says like brokers, freight forwarders, and some other entities, and nowhere in the statute does it say shipper. But some courts are like, well, yeah, the same logic extends to the shipper, but in my argument is, well, if it was intended to apply to shippers, then Congress would have written shipper along with the other 52 people they named, right? So, just having a pulse on that stuff. But the pure trucking stuff generally is going to be pretty similar.
If I were to come up to you and let's say I was a senior in college and I said, Jordan, I'm thinking about going to law school and I'm thinking about maybe trying to be a trucking lawyer. What kind of advice would you give me on that, Jordan? Do you enjoy it? Would you recommend I do that? What would you say to me if I asked you that?
My advice would be go to med school and become a trauma surgeon instead. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'd say, listen, that's awesome. Practicing law, it's a very noble profession, and especially doing not to disparage my colleagues on the other side, but I feel like doing plaintiff's work, you're doing like good, meaningful work, and you're like helping people through horrible times in their lives. You're kind of ensuring their safety and their security in the future. And I also think, to a degree, tort is a deterrent. And the reason we have lawsuits, a big part of the reason we have lawsuits is to reinforce safety. I mean, if everyone had free reign to do whatever the hell they wanted, I mean, safety would fly out the window. There's no repercussions. So I think it's a very noble thing. Yeah, stick with it. Be prepared to work hard. It's a tremendous amount of work. It's a heavy lift, but it's very, very rewarding. You got to do it for the right reasons. That's what I would say. A lot of people, they want to do PI because they think they're going to make a lot of money. And sure, you can make a lot of money, but that's not why you should do PI. It's not. And if that's your motivation, I think you're going to have a short and not so brilliant career, in my opinion.
Thank you. Jordan, if someone wants to reach out to you, how should they do that? Do you have a phone number, an email address, or your website? Can you maybe share that with everyone?
Yeah, sure. My website is trucklawyers.com. Email is a really good way to get a hold of me, jjones@trucklawyers.com. And a great way, probably the best way to get a hold of me, honestly, is Instagram. I'm on Instagram all the time. I post a lot of trucking videos, actually, just, short, like 1 minute, just about various questions I get and share them with other folks. My Instagram is @jjones.esq. My office number is 213-700-7266. So yeah, hit me up, reach out if you have any trucking questions. I love talking trucking, and I try to help people as much as I can too. So
thank you very, very much, Jordan. I really appreciate it. We're doing this on Saturday on Memorial Weekend. So thank you very, very much, and look forward to seeing you if you're going to the ATAA seminar in Texas, I think in September.
I'll be there. I'll see you there. And hey, listen, thanks again for inviting me on. This was awesome. It was great seeing you again and catching up. And good luck to everybody out there.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much, Jordan.